Hello, and it's another Friday. Welcome to Friday Drinks, another episode of us talking nonsense, sharing a drink, and trying to fix the world's problems. Once again, I'm obliged to tell you that if you think that we know what we're talking about, you ought to have your head examined. We're just having drinks in a pub and sharing views about the world. Gents, what are we having this week? Okay, we must ask you. It's obligatory.
Taganda tea.
Again?
Well, he was
It's
at
very
Pharahs
cold.
Dressing last weekend, so this is a change. Do you have anything interesting to tell us? Do you have anything interesting to tell us about Taganda tea?
Well, it's one of our best expos, so I enjoy it.
Well, actually, the numbers don't suggest that it's one of our best exports,
One off.
but
One off.
no, okay, we'll take
A lot of people in the diaspora love the Taganda.
Okay.
but best.
One off.
Anyway.
All right.
We're drinking something much more interesting.
Shuma.
Yes.
What are we having?
We are having Japanese whiskey today.
They make whiskey in Japan.
Oh yeah, and you know the Japanese have taken the whiskey world by storm. It used to be once upon a time Scotland had a monopoly on great whiskey, and you know maybe Irish whiskey, American bourbon, but now they're right up there with the Scottish version, and the House of Suntory, which makes what we're drinking, the Hibiki, is a world-class blend that our sponsor was very generous in donating to us.
A sponsor? Who's the generous benefactor?
Yeah, a good friend of mine. He's a very successful entrepreneur in this market who's built a business that will pick you up when you wreck your car.
Who's this?
Taganda.
Oh, Taganda. Road Angels Taganda.
Yes,
Biggest tow truck owner in Zimbabwe.
I think so.
This is some very good stuff. I think in our tradition, tunofana kumbotenda saura vedu. So, Misha. Now we will take a sip. If the Balvini is the nectar of the gods, I have no words for this. Maybe by the end of the show, I'll have the correct adjectives. But definitely after the show, we'll be here for a while. Anyway, gentlemen, what do we?
There's something very interesting about Pharahs Dressing. He's looking particularly
Yes, he's got a
dashing.
jacket.
He's got a jacket today. Would you like to tell us why?
It was cold at my last meeting.
You own jackets.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I do. From a prior life, you know, when I used to wear these things that cut off blood circulation called ties.
Well, you look particularly dashing, I must say.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment with a pinch of salt.
It's better than his Sherlock Holmes pajama thing going on over there. But anyway, let's go on to the business of the day. A lot of things have happened this week. Let's begin with the reversal of SI 127. Reversal, partial reversal.
It wasn't reversed, they changed some parts of it. Very important.
Okay, wait. Okay, no, explain. They changed some parts of it. What do you mean?
Okay, so when it was announced, basically, the dual pricing mechanism, right? If you're a retailer and you were selling your wares for both Zim dollars and US dollars, the rate, right? If you divided your Zim dollar price by the US dollar price, should equal the auction rate. And if it didn't equal the auction rate, you were breaking the law and you were going to be in trouble. That was what.
And if you didn't have books, my mother, the primary school teacher, if she didn't have books of accounts, a special bank account, and so on, she was breaking the law.
So The business community obviously wasn't amused by this, and they engaged Treasury and the central bank. And to their credit, I'll give them kudos. They actually listened, and they decided that, you know what, if you want to offer products at a discount in US dollars,
They listened?
yeah, they listened. They checked.
Who issued SI 127?
Well, it's the Ministry of Finance, right?
Who
And then
retracted SI 127?
This is a circular. Yeah, that's the other thing. This is not an SI. The SI still holds. By law, the SI still holds. But what the Reserve Bank has done is issue a circular. Now, he's giving kudos to the central bank for issuing a circular. Up until the SI has been reversed, I think what we need to be clear of is that the SI holds.
You were at great
It's a
pains
law.
last week to explain the difference between fiscal policy and monetary policy. Apparently, the whole audience was confused. Nobody understood what we were talking about. But the gist of it was fiscal policy is the remit of the Ministry of Finance. Monetary policy is the remit of central
Absolutely.
bank.
Absolutely.
So, Uncle George issues an SI, which has power deriving from the Finance Act or one other such act.
Presidential temporary powers.
Powers, yeah.
It's coming from the top of the food chain.
Exactly.
And then Uncle JPM says, "Well, we're not
Issues
really
a
going to
circular.
we're not really going to implement it."
No, guys,
He has the
I
remit
think
to implement.
I think we're trying to split hairs, right? On the ground, effectively, what this means is that you can sell your US dollar products at a discount. It doesn't. The effective exchange rate
What
doesn't
is
have
the
to
law?
be.
What has been issued is a circular. I'm just saying, let's be pedantic and let's.
You
not-
like being pedantic.
Let's not misinform people.
No. But
Right?
so,
I know
so,
we're drinking,
So should we?
and
should
it's
we,
Japanese whiskey.
No, Look, is the circular issued by the central bank effective?
So that's a
what I
good
care
point.
about.
That's a good
I
point.
I don't really care about. I'm not going to be pedantic. I care about, is it effective? Does it?
That's a very good point.
In my day-to-day
So,
experience, is it
can my
effective?
mother safely go about collecting US dollars from the kids to teachers, or Zim dollars at an effective
central
exchange
bank-
rate of 130,
The
and not
central
worry about
bank-
getting arrested?
The central bank circular says it's fine.
Is my mom safe?
Maybe we need a lawyer.
He's splitting
now.
hairs. It's kind of like saying, okay.
Maybe we need a lawyer now.
Are you saying
Okay,
my mom's safe?
I will explain one thing.
I'm saying
So
my mom
there's
is
always
safe.
one thing.
My mom is safe.
I think she's safe.
Okay.
Well,
Can I explain something? Can I explain something? Why I think it's necessary for us to be, to be very exact about these matters. Very often, what happens is the Ministry of Finance will say something pertaining to duty or excise duty or changes in the tax law. And Zimra will come back and say, yes, that's what the minister has said, but the law has not changed. So we always need to be very careful about it. So it's very encouraging that the central bank has put out this circular.
So it's a good thing. You agree it's a good thing?
It is encouraging.
Encouraging is a good thing, or it's not a good thing.
It is
A lot of
encouraging.
feedback says we cut him off too much. Let him finish.
Okay.
I'm not sure why anybody wants to listen. But anyway, carry on.
No, I'm saying what the central bank is saying is very encouraging, that people will be able to use their US dollars and can offer discounts or premiums or a premium price within their retail stores. What the SI, as far as the central bank will be concerned with, are people who misuse the auction system, which I think is fair. Anyone who's taking money from the auction.
Does the SI does the SI have
It's a
a
good thing. The statement issued by the central bank, it's a good thing. That's what you're saying, fundamentally.
That's why I said it's not fundamental. Because remember, there's still an SI that encourages the use of an auction system that has a discount of 60%, that is taking money from exporters and giving that money at a discount to importers. That's not a good thing. So that's the fundamental. So I'm saying, if the statement, the circular in itself, is encouraging, because that might be the start of us getting to a situation where we totally abolish the
Okay,
auction
so
system.
you guys both agree. We're moving from something that was bad or not as good to something that is less bad or better.
Okay, he's going to struggle to say such things. But I think we are better off thanks to the central bank statement.
Okay,
This is not
and
rocket science.
we hope that the police agree with the central bank, and we hope that at some stage
The law will be
catch up.
changed.
Okay, interesting.
Would Rufaro agree that the law has not changed?
Yeah, look, I think that I'll concede the point that the law hasn't changed, but I think that if you live and work and do business in Zimbabwe, what you care about more is not the specifics of the law, but what's actually effective on the ground.
Interesting. And what's very interesting among the things that have happened this week, right, is so you had this reversal, and a few days before the reversal, you had Delta publish their numbers. Delta is, I think, the biggest taxpayer in this country. They publish their numbers, and in the comments that accompany their numbers, they said, I paraphrase, and I'm sorry, Matt, I know you had much nicer English, but they said something along the lines of, yeah, there's an exchange rate called the auction exchange rate of 84, 85. We're not really going to use that because we don't think that's real. And I don't think they actually said what number they were using, but they said we're going to use a different number to translate our US
They were
dollars.
very vague about the formula they were using, but they were clear that the official number, the auction rate, from their perspective, wasn't a real rate.
And isn't that very interesting? I mean, for the longest time, all of us growing up in business always viewed Delta as being in bed with the state. And to have them make such a powerful statement so publicly.
I think what's more curious is to hear your view as an accountant, because
I'm not an accountant anymore.
Reading between the lines, well, you were once an auditor.
A long time ago.
And from what we understand, you as an auditor, would you have encouraged them to say such a statement? And I think it had a lot to do with whether or not they were misinforming the public and the investing public and their shareholders. So I'll be very interested to hear what an auditor would have said pertaining to that, pertaining to their financials.
I think an auditor would he'd have been conflicted because there's different audiences for these numbers. There's Zimra, there's local investors, there's foreign investors, and so on. But I would tell you what I think the CFO of Delta's considerations would have been. He's got a big backlog of dividends to pay to his foreign investors. He's got a big backlog of so-called legacy debt to pay to his creditors offshore. And he's struggling to explain to them why he can't pay them. And he's possibly looking at a possible situation.
Why the numbers are showing a boost in profit, but he can't pay.
And there's a possible situation in the future in which, if nothing is done about those numbers, they could actually bankrupt him. So I imagine that was weighing high on his considerations when he was considering those statements and when he was doing his calculations of how much debt he really has and what his revenue is really worth. I'm supposed to be asking the questions here. How did you do that?
No, it's very interesting.
I think you guys are reading way too much into the commentary around Delta's numbers. I look at it like a simpleton.
You are a simpleton.
They're a business, okay? Before SI 127 was announced, they were getting 50% of their revenue in hard currency. They were able to meet all the import requirements from internally generated revenues, as well as their capex. They could plan their lives. Things were dandy in Delta world, okay? SI 127 comes along, and what it means is that their US dollar receipts are going to go poof and disappear, and their only recourse is going to be the auction, and they don't actually believe that they would meet their import requirements through the auction. So they have to speak out. They have to say, guys, this is not going to work.
But
So it's not because this.
But the comments
this
to the report came before, and it was done way before the SI.
Well, we don't know. We weren't
Well,
in their boardrooms.
I know when it was published, and I think
So you're saying that as soon as the SI was announced, they had full reports, and then they decided, oh, let's add a further commentary because of the SI.
I think it would be foolish to discount the impact of the SI on the commentary around their numbers.
But I think you're both right and wrong. I think definitely this is a discussion they would have had before. They would have had this with their auditors. They would have had it with their majority shareholder, who is a foreign entity. And there would have been a lot of discussion internally in Delta around.
What's the international practice from an accounting perspective?
No, but before we even go there, okay, pre-SI 127, right, they were getting all this US dollar revenue. Why would they care about the accounting aspect of it? If they could meet all their obligations, denominated.
I'll tell you why it matters. Because number one, you've got legacy debt, which you've got to translate into something versus your asset value, versus your revenues, versus your current costs. Number two, you're not actually getting enough US dollars to meet all your costs, and not all your revenues US dollars. So, a Castle Light sold in Zim dollars and a Castle Light sold in US dollars, are they worth the same? And this is a question that the accountants would have at the tops of their minds. Which one's worth more, and how do I reflect it in my numbers?
And they're foreign shareholders. They would want to understand these dynamics.
I'll be very interested to see, I think soon we'll be seeing companies like BAT. I know the analyst community doesn't spend a lot of time on BAT, but I find it very, very interesting. It's got an addictive product, which is mass market and costs very little. I'll be very interested to see how BAT is going to treat this, because they've also got majority foreign investment. And they would be in the same situation as Delta, where they're collecting were collecting a lot of their revenue in US dollars, where they probably owe their shareholder dividends. Most of the raw materials, except for the tobacco, come from outside the country. The packaging, the printing inks, the spares for their machinery, everything comes from outside the country. It'll be interesting to see if they follow the Delta route, or whether they stick to 85 or 84 as the exchange rate.
The other curious thing is, for simpletons, what are individuals doing out there? How are they reporting their assets and liabilities, their balances, at a personal level?
Yeah, but who are individuals reporting their numbers to at a personal level?
In your head.
In your head. When you, or let's say hypothetically, you get the opportunity to get some money on the auction, to import a car, to buy a spare part, or whatever. In your head,
School fees.
are you even, or in your head have you made a gain?
Look, I think this for most individuals, the auction is a universe not accessible to them. It's not applicable to them at all. Everybody has
School
to.
fees. A lot of people.
No,
$1.4 billion has passed through the auction.
No, but okay, school fees is even remote for a lot of people. But I'll tell you what is relevant to a lot of the people watching this show: Dstv payments.
Yeah.
So until the Reserve Bank opened this window where you can go and get your Dstv payment from any bureau de change, you are having to find the dollars or make a plan to pay your Dstv. Now,
As you should.
Now, I wonder, all the people that were making alternative plans to pay their DSTV and can now go to bureau de change. Okay, for you and me, when we pay our DSTV, we pay a rate around 91, thereabouts, to pay our DSTV. I wonder if those people are viewing themselves as square with the previous status quo, or whether they feel that they're actually making some sort of gain getting that currency from a bureau de change.
Look, I think it's a bargain, right? If you have to actually generate the US dollars and make the payment, and if you're getting them at 85 is a bargain. 85 is a surreal rate. I don't think anybody thinks that is fair value.
The central bank believes so. The Ministry of Finance
they might say so, but I mean, look, okay, so I always like
not
to think
only
in terms
are
of...
they saying so.
No. Okay.
They've got a rate at 85 that they've given $1.4 billion.
So let's look at the data, okay? We had the initial version of SI 127 where they said that you can't discount anything in US dollars. If the effective rate is anything more than 85, it's illegal, right? And then literally within days, they said, well, actually, it's okay to discount. And I think that, to me, effectively what they're saying is, they're saying, look, there are certain essential goods and services which are going to get preferential allocation of currency at 85 through the auction. But for everything else that's not essential, if you want to drink,
sort yourself out.
Sort yourself out, and we don't actually care. That's what they say.
It'll be interesting to find out from Mijer what he paid for this.
Yeah. So I think they're actually saying they don't care.
Wait, let me get you correct.
As long as it's not.
Rufaro, is 1.5 or 1.4 billion dollars a lot of money?
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money,
especially in a Zimbabwean context.
Right. And 1.4 has passed through the auction at a rate of 85. Average discount to the
over
market.
what kind of period?
Over the last year. That's why I was about to put an average discount over the last year and say the average discount would be, let's call it 30% for purposes of this discussion. Do you still think that that is just and that should happen?
Of course not.
Oh, okay. No.
Oh, that's a different question.
You cannot use words like just on this show.
Just? I didn't say fair.
You actually use both. You actually use both.
No, I did not. I'm very clear about that, and Rufaro knows exactly what I say. I do not use the word fair. I don't.
But you said
in my lexicon,
yes, okay, it doesn't.
In my lexicon, I do not know the word fair.
But even
but
the word
I
just,
know
but,
the
but,
word
but,
just.
but the just doesn't belong on this show.
No, just in the sense that there is somebody who's been prejudiced. It's not a moral judgment. But there is somebody who's been prejudiced, and that person has been prejudiced up to 30%.
Okay.
And that person, why is it we're in a conversation where we focus purely on the guy who's getting a 30% discount, and we never focus on the guy who's getting a 30%, who's been prejudiced 30% over the last year.
We know who's being prejudiced.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not controversial. This is in the public domain.
So why do we still have the auction?
It's not
okay, but that's not the point of this discussion. The point of this discussion was just to talk about events of the last week and Delta's numbers. But okay, let's move on.
Maybe that's what Delta is trying to tell us.
Maybe one of these days we'll have Matt or Alex sitting here and we'll ask them. But moving on. Three other things happened this week that I found interesting in light of SI 127 and all the discussions we've had in the previous weeks on currency. FBC bought out its foreign shareholder. Now, to our maybe less informed viewers, this is interesting because there was a foreign shareholder who had shares in FBC, and he didn't sell them to another investor. He sold them back to the company. So I imagine there was a discussion along the lines of the investor saying to the company, I want out. The company saying, well, what can we do? Nobody wants your shares. Backwards and forwards. And eventually the company says, okay, we'll pay you. And we'll hold your shares until we can find somebody else to buy them. That was event number one. Number two, I don't think that's what happened. I think that the reason why the company bought them is because the company is a bank and is in the best position to ship the proceeds out. If they could have sold them to somebody else who would have given them real money, they would have. But okay, so we're saying the same thing.
So no, we're not. But
the investor wanted out. Nobody else could give him real value. So the bank eventually said, okay, we'll sort you out. Number two, Seedco Zim, which had been unbundled from Seedco International. Now that's a whole other story if viewers are not familiar with it. But come with us for a second.
Okay, I'll paraphrase for you.
Thank you.
A foreign company, Seedco International, wanted to buy Seedco Zimbabwe, and the Reserve Bank stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. End of story.
Well, but the bit that I thought some of the viewers might not be familiar with is the foreign company is the child of the Zimbabwean company that had been spun off and then decided it wanted to reunite with its parent, albeit in reversed roles. So the old Seedco was going to come back together again. But what's important was it was going to list on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, which would basically make the local
Seedco International, just to correct you there, is already listed on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. It was now just going to buy the Zim business.
Thank you. And everything was going to come back together again, and local Seedco was now going to be accessible to foreign shareholders and be able basically to trade, I'm trying to keep it simple, but to trade sort of derivatively in foreign currency. And as you point out, GOZ said, no, you can't do that because you're trying to externalize a strategic asset. The third thing is there's a company called Padenga that used to only grow crocodiles and export crocodile skins. Most of them end up in Louis Vuitton bags, believe it or not.
Hermes.
Sorry, Hermes.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, geez. My French is bad.
Thank you, Rufaro. Hey, you're on point today. And then later on went into gold mining. Everybody was a little bit confused about why they started mining gold. But it's listed on the stock exchange, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. And this week told us that they want to move to the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, from where their investors will be able to trade their shares in foreign currency as well. They told us that it had something to do with the incentives that the Ministry of Finance was offering for moving to the stock exchange. I saw it in light of our discussion last week as perhaps a flight of capital. All three of these put together. But gents, what do you think?
I don't see it as a flight of capital. I see it as trying to get around the whole, dual economy where you have Zim dollars and you have US dollars. Because once you're listed on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, one other thing that you benefit from is you benefit from an economic process zone. What that means is you can trade 100% in Forex. So if you earn your Forex, if you export and you bring in your Forex, you can retain it 100%.
You don't have to give up the 20%?
You don't need to give up the 40%.
40%,
you can have,
yes.
Yeah, so you can hold 100%. And what it's just telling you is that the dual economy has created these disparities and huge arbitrage opportunities where if you're an exporter, you start thinking, okay, I didn't mind when I was giving up 10% or 20%, now I have to give up 40% and it's equivalent to 60%. And 60%, the difference between the paro market and the auction rate, it's now extremely huge. So that's why I think Seedco, Padenga, a lot of companies were now pushing themselves out of the local listed exchange and onto the Victoria Falls exchange. Is just purely to run away from the expropriation that's happening with the auction.
Expropriation is a big word.
Taking away by force.
I think he's being dramatic. I think he's being dramatic. What the challenge is with retention rates and the auction rate and currency rates is that it's a grey tax. Okay, so if you're a mine in this country, you pay for your mineral rights, you pay royalties, and you pay certain taxes. Okay, but over and above that, depending on what the exchange control regime is, depending on what the arbitrage is between the power market and the official rate and the retention rules, right? Your taxes might be much higher than you planned when you made your investment, or they might be lower, right? So to me, the problem is not that it's another tax, right? Because there's no way you're going to mine anywhere in the world and not pay tax. Everybody who, any mining investor understands that in any jurisdiction on the planet, you're going to pay tax, right? But the thing is, mining projects are 5, 10, sometimes 20-year projects, okay? And you need to be able to understand the regulatory framework in the context of that investment horizon. And if there's a significant part of your tax that is unknown, right? Because you can wake up 6 months from now or a year from now, and the retention is different, the rates are different, the arbitrage is different, right? You could be paying significantly higher or lower taxes. Nobody's going to invest. And I think that's the challenge.
I just want to have fun with Rufaro here for a second. Is tax expropriation or not?
You're being pedantic.
No, you had issues with the word expropriation.
We're
You just found another word.
We're going to have another whole show on economic.
But I agree. I
ideology
must say, I do agree with what Rufaro is saying. And this is the point that a lot of people are missing. That you make these decisions, mining companies make a decision based on 20, 30-year horizons. Now, what's happening at the present moment is they cannot invest. Right now, there's a commodity boom. And instead of them benefiting from that commodity boom and actually investing in their capital investment, what's happening is the auction is, money is being taken away from them and it's going to somebody else who's importing something else, but not going into
I think you're actually
investment.
onto a very interesting point. You and I grew up with ZBC News, and there used to be the Standard Chartered Financial Highlights. And for the longest time, I was a kid, but I knew the price of gold was around 300.
Next time Standard Chartered should pay us before you mention them by name. You should just say, on ZBC, they were highlights.
But how come he gets to advertise
We're trying to get sponsors.
How does he get to advertise his tea? Okay, sorry. Okay, noted. They had those financial highlights, and we all knew the price of gold was $330 an ounce.
You're giving away your age.
We knew silver was 1,000, whatever it was, dollars a...
Anyway, I think the point you're trying to make slowly is that commodity prices are at all-time highs, or they look like they're going to be at all-time highs, and Zimbabwe is a resource-rich nation, has an opportunity.
Wait, is there something in here that actually sinks our minds? Because that's exactly what I was saying.
Exactly. So
how come we haven't benefited?
Because we don't have the correct policy framework. Because we are a resource-rich nation, and with commodity prices flying, we should have a queue of foreign investors negotiating with our government to give us billions of dollars to buy mineral rights to build billion-dollar mines.
But we have sanctions.
I don't think. Look, I think that there's a policy framework problem as well, where somebody who could potentially invest $5-10 billion, right, who doesn't care about sanctions, okay? So if you're an investor from Russia or China, okay, I don't think they...
Korea.
I don't think they care, you know, what the Americans or Europeans think so much, right? They are looking at alpha, return on invested capital, right? They should be in a queue to pump money into this economy. Why isn't that happening? And I think it's because of the mining policy framework, where they fly to Harare, they meet the important bureaucrats, they crunch the numbers, and it doesn't make sense.
Moti will agree with you, but Zanu Moti, if you remember, he came in, I think, 2014, 2015. By 2018, 2019, things had gone horribly wrong. And I think to speak to, I don't think it's the mining policy, but it's the country policy, because the time horizon for a mine is 20, 30 years. I don't see anyone in Zimbabwe having or making, you know, those sort of decisions, investment decisions, where your time horizon is 20, 30 years. Here, the time horizons is usually 6 months, a year, because policy changes all the time. If you look at what's happening in Tanzania, you know, Barrick Gold put in, you know, over $1 billion in gold mining. If you look at what's happening in the DRC, you get $3-4 billion going in there. You look at what's happening in Mozambique, 20 billion, you know. So there's a lot of money that does not care what the Americans think. I agree. So, but the most important question we must be asking ourselves is, why is that capital, the Buccaneer kind of capital, why is it shying away from Zimbabwe? And I think part of the problem is because the time horizons in Zimbabwe are very short term. It's 2 years, 3 years. we don't go through a 10-year cycle. Or,
Doesn't that
20-year
actually
cycle.
begin with us as Zimbabweans? You know, I look at all the Zimbabweans on redistributed land, redistributed farmland, and I struggle to count on the fingers of one hand new farmers who've planted trees, plantations. Someone who's gone onto a piece of land and said, I'm going to plant oranges, and I'm going to wait 3 to 5 years before I harvest the first one.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, we're not so sure they'll be there in 5 years' time.
Because the law.
They've been there for 20 years.
But you don't know whether you'll be there next year because you don't have a title deed, right? And because you could wake up tomorrow morning afoul of the powers that be, and they could just evict you. So why would you make a long-term investment? If it was your money, would you do it?
I am doing it.
Good luck.
Okay, I must admit, I'm doing it on communal land, which
Even
has
that is not safe.
Which has lower security.
It's not safe from what we learned
Then a list of
in
allocation.
Chilonga.
Communal land, you believe communal land has a lower security of tenure than...
I'm subject to the whims of the chief.
Yeah, but you know the chief, he's your kin. You're much safer. You're much safer. With your chief than a bureaucrat for whom you have no blood in common. So I think this is the challenge from a policy standpoint in terms of consistency, that nobody's going to make serious long-term investments if they can't figure out what the policy framework is going to look like in 6 months or a year, right?
That takes us to an interesting little aside, which is the president saying we can have concerts on Saturday, and the vice president saying we can't on Sunday. What do you guys make of that?
Okay, I'm not going to judge harshly in terms of COVID policy, because look, guys, let's call a spade, right? From the moment this pandemic appeared on the scene, global leadership has been abysmal. Okay, so start with China, where the first significant outbreak was, right? You had the Chinese government denying that this was a thing, that it was important, that anybody needed to worry about it. Okay, in Wuhan province. Okay, then you had the president of the United States talking about ingesting disinfectants. Okay, you had the mayor of New York telling New Yorkers they could use the subway, they should carry on as if life is dandy because this thing is not going to affect New York, right? You had South Africa have the most epic lockdown ever. You had people running marathons in their yards because they couldn't leave their houses to run, right? And they have the worst outcomes on the planet. You have India, right, which is basically the world's pharmacy. They make most of the world's pharmaceutical products.
They sold us a vaccine
miserably to make a plan to vaccinate their own people, and they're having an epic third wave right now. So I think, leadership globally on COVID has been abysmal, okay? So in the context of the global picture, right, I think Zim has done reasonably well.
Sorry, can you just reach out your hand? Just reach out your hand to me. So are we 2 meters apart?
I think so.
So we're probably socially sorry, okay, carry on.
I don't know, Tinasha.
I don't have much to say about how, but I tend to agree with what Farah is saying, that the global leadership, as far as COVID-19 has been concerned, has been quite atrocious, to say the least. So I would not blame Zimbabwe government specifically for that. What I would blame them for is that COVID brought with it a very peculiar period where we could have reset. So what I mean is, if you look at our fuel imports, because we are a big fuel importing country, we import about $1.4 billion of fuel in a good year. What COVID did, especially last year, is we only imported, I think, 700 to 800. So there was a huge saving there, and we let that go. So that's my issue is there were huge savings.
What do you mean we let it go? We have a surplus.
No, what then happened is, well, I think we've already discussed the issue of surpluses. What then happened is you then had a fixed exchange rate. So you've got this, you've limited your imports, right, which is a good thing. Instead of letting the market be, because the market was not going to run because you already limited your imports. The second thing that we did is we actually borrowed more. So that's a period where you're not supposed to be borrowing. That's a period where you thank...
But we're not producing.
We thank the Lord. Well, you didn't need to produce because people were at home.
Yeah, but we needed revenue.
Right.
We needed to fund public services. We needed to keep the government going.
We had enough to get the government going.
Remember the
pressure
from the taxes.
He's a glass half empty kind of guy. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I think we've done better.
I think your glass is 3/4 empty.
I think we've done.
To me, it was a missed opportunity. That's all I'm saying. So I do not blame the government in how they've generally reacted because the America, China, the UK, we let up the UK.
Boris Johnson.
It was just really, it was atrocious. It was atrocious. So I think, I don't want to judge them harshly in that, but I think it was a good opportunity for us to reset. So instead of us actually saying, well, this has happened, what does it mean from an economic perspective? Because that's what I'm concerned about. Because, we had 2 years of a depression, so negative growth, and then we cannot afford another third year. So this was the time to just reset. And instead of taking money from the exporters, because they were enjoying a commodity boom, where you allowed them, where you literally say, well, we haven't been importing, so there's no import pressure. Our exporters are enjoying this commodity boom. Let's ask them to invest in the country. This is a perfect time to invest in the country.
So what should we do now?
That's a great question.
We're in a third wave, perhaps...
not really, but...
Touch wood.
No, that's not green. That's not wood, but...
Touch wood, not as bad as most of the other countries.
We've done quite well.
We've got a minor lockdown going on. What should we do now?
I'm not a health expert, so I do not like
to
because dabble. I don't like to dabble in things that I
from
know.
an economic point of view.
Yeah, from an economic
point of view, what should we
From
do?
an export point of view, I think that now is an opportunity for us to liberalize. To tell exporters, listen, guys, we are going to do away with detentions. This is what you're going to pay for mineral rights. This is what your royalty is. This is what the tax is. Okay?
And the only way they have comfort is basically we've got to now go and
what you do with your currency entirely up to you.
But if you go back to your previous point, Rufaro, about policy inconsistency, the only way you're going to give these guys confidence that this is any different from anything before is if you enshrine it in the Constitution.
Absolutely.
Is that what you're suggesting?
That would be
constitutional
I don't think so. And I think you're mixing up issues. So while you're right, Rufaro, that this is the time to liberalize, unfortunately it's true that nobody will believe them. People will believe that, this is a stopgap measure, something is fundamentally gone wrong, and they will allow the liberalization to happen, but as soon as money comes in, they will switch. I think this is a perfect time for the currency board. If what you want is confidence for the exporters and the importers and remittances and aid. Remember, the Zimbabwean monetary system is not just the central bank anymore. We have a lot of remittances coming in. We have a lot of aid coming in. And if you want confidence for everybody, you need something, 10, 20 years where you have an arrangement.
But why would anyone believe in the currency board?
Because it's underwritten by the South African.
Oh, we're going back to your idea from 4 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
But at this point, our producer's jumping up and down, so I've got to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining us this Friday. It's been lovely, as you can see. We have not done nearly enough damage to that bottle, so Rufaro and I will continue to do that. I don't know what Tinashe is going to do. I don't know, maybe he's going to polish his shoes or take out a leather jacket or something. But as usual, don't take us too seriously. And I hope you're starting to pick up from our discussions that there's always two sides to every matter. Glass half full, glass half empty. in the words of Kenny Rogers.
Who's that, by the way?
I know a little bit about music.
You know his age.
In one of my favorite songs, The Gambler, every hand is a winner, every hand is a loser. You've got to know when to hold them, you've got to know when to fold them, you've got to know when to run away. It's really your choice. What we try and do is to expose the different facets of every argument, the merits and demerits of the different ideologies, the different philosophies, so you can inspire discussions, so you can make up your own mind. Stay safe, have a lovely weekend, and thank you for joining us.